All right. Well, happy Thursday again. We made it back. It's been a bit of a rough week. I pulled a muscle in my back blowing up an air mattress because getting old sucks. And then took a bunch of stuff, and apparently it was the bad combination of things, and was like out all of Tuesday. But I slept, which was good. So I'm still hopped up on ibuprofen to keep me up and moving. So I'll be a little spacier than usual. Just holler at me, reel me back in. It's all good. We'll get there. We're doing our supplemental stuff today. We did a blitz through, here's all the things you know how to do. Here's how you do it in C# last week. Now we're going to talk about Windows Forms. We'll do a really quick Maui demo. I'll hit run on the Hello World demo, essentially. Show you that it works, which is fun. If that's your kind of thing, really cool. You got lots of options in .NET. And then XAML we'll kind of introduce because we're going to be using that later in the Universal Windows Platform section where we build our game to run on Xbox. Still trying to get in contact with the guy who supports the Xbox because it's not IT, it's the CIS admin guy, but he works for, long story. But we'll get it up and running, and we have two, so even if I broke one, the other one should still work, which is good news. And then we'll come back next week, wrap up the second section, object-oriented programming. We got three different parts here, essentially. There's a lot to it. I'm going to try and show a little bit of it tonight. Just for fun, show you some cool things we can do with object-oriented programming in C#, some fun shortcuts. We'll get to the advanced topics, and then we'll have all of the C# basics. We've gone through the book. Hopefully you got a chance to find the book. If you enjoy it, let me know. If you hate it, let me know. I think it's better than most of the dense textbooks, but again, that's my opinion, and I've been doing it for a while now. So if he's not good, let me know. We can look at a different book. But and then spring recess, still in the dead of winter. Well, we'll probably still have snow for your spring recess. Maybe you'll go somewhere, but it feels like spring, and that's why we call it spring recess. We'll come back to the midterm, and then we'll move on to data stuff, spend 2 weeks working on databases, and then move on to our final project, doing Universal Windows Platform programming to build our game on Xbox. Have a lot of fun doing it. Build some silly little Atari clones. It's not nothing, but it's not amazing. It's not like a really cool platformer game, but you could. Right? We've got the basics down, and we can do it that way, and we should be able to go from there. So, all right, how'd the project go for you? Our first game, our terrible game. Game was a bad word for it. I apologize, I misled you. I told my wife and her sibling, and they thought it was mean for me to tell you you're going to do a game and then call it the "Don't Go to Jail for Tax Evasion" game. I thought it was funny, but that's me. They go, okay, was it, half an hour to an hour, no more than 2 hours? Okay. All right, cool. So we're going to do that real quick. I'm going to show you a couple tips, tricks, things that might make that quick for you here. And then the next project we're going to work on is actually doing that again, but with a Windows form, because we're going to talk about Windows forms today. So instead of typing stuff in a black box, which almost no one does anymore, we'll actually build a user interface with clicky buttons and text boxes and, somewhat modern-y things. It's no website, but we could build websites in C#. We just don't have time for that right now. So I'll build my console app here. We'll call this, I'll make sure I put in the right folder here. So if it's in, this is, again, the course GitHub repository. This is where I'm linking the lecture archives. Someone had emailed me and asked where they were. So they're out here in the GitHub repo, down in the copy of the syllabus. I didn't put them in Canvas. I just didn't want to have to copy paste the link twice because I'm lazy. So they're here if you're looking for them. So when your classmates ask you, hey, where's the lecture archive? Point them here to the GitHub repo, okay? All right, so this will be project 0. And then we need that little MoneyChimp link, because that's going to have all the bracket info for us here. This will be pretty helpful. Did I not put the link in? I thought I gave you the MoneyChimp link. I'm sorry, MoneyChimp. Tax brackets. I'm sure you could Google it yourself, so no worries here. And then if you did single brackets, great. If you do Mary brackets, great. It doesn't really matter which one you picked, right? They just have different start and end points here. Is it going to throw you off if you do the married brackets? Because those are the numbers I'm familiar with. Is that okay? All right, no one said no, so all right, we'll go with that. All right. So a couple things we needed, right? We were going to have probably integers for income and deductions. If you wanted to use doubles, that's great too. I don't actually know if they care about the pennies. not really sure. I don't think there's room for pennies, but I don't look at the forms because I had to pay a TurboTax a bunch of money to do it because they lobbied and the Fed said, okay, we won't give people a freeway because you'll get a freeway, but the freeway also gives you like 15 prompts to pay them money. And you're like, oh, maybe I should pay you money. But soon, I think this year, they were going to try and pilot a actual free through the IRS way to submit your taxes. Which
I heard there was. I did. Yeah.
Yeah, is it okay? So they're piloting it this year, right?
The problem is if you've already filed like previous years and you've already paid, that's the first option that comes up. And unless you click the link below it that says I want the free version, click on other options, then you have to answer a bunch of questions for it to tell you, yeah, I only have a W2, that's it.
I'm a little embarrassed to admit, I think I probably checked the box that said, give me the TurboTax subscription, because I saw like a charge come through on my credit card. I'm like, I didn't buy TurboTax yet, but apparently I did. So, but yeah, so that you can get additional things, and the more money you have, turns out the more savings you can find in taxes, because tax avoidance is perfectly legal, right? Maximize your deductions to as much as you can here, and the software is good at that because they cater to people who have money, right? And that's sort of how the system works. And okay, anyway, so I'm just going to do integer here. We'll have our, how about gross income, right? And maybe we'll start off at 0, and then we'll have an int for total deductions. Start that one off at 0, right? And then we want it to do some sort of loop, right? Ask them, keep on entering income until you're done, or how many incomes do you have to enter? Either way is fine. I sort of like the idea of let's just keep entering numbers, and when you're done, enter 0. That sort of value, like a sentinel value inside of a loop. I'm fond of that because otherwise I have to enter a number and hit yes, enter a number, hit yes, enter a number, and hit yes, or count them first. And you know me, I'm lazy. I'm not going to say, oh, okay, I've got 7 W-2s to file. Hopefully you don't have 7. But you might have some number of W-2s to enter. So we can say, I don't know, an int for, here's the income input. How about that, right? That's nice and easy here. And I'm going to start this off at, I don't know, something here. -1, something that's not 0, because I want the loop to run. It doesn't really matter what I started off of. Again, I don't like do loops just because there's a semicolon there at the end, and that is really the entire reason I avoid do loops. Because I spent like 3 hours debugging a program once because of a stupid semicolon, and I hate them ever since. So we'll say, well, in my income input does not equal 0. Let's go ask the user for it. So, nope, that's CW to enter a W2 income or 0 to stop, right? And then I'll get my income input is equal to a console.readline. Read line, and we need to convert that, right? So into parse the console read line, turn that into an integer, goodness, somewhere in here, right? And eventually we'll get something that's an income or 0. If they entered 0 and I add it to my running total, it doesn't change, right? So that should be fine. So my gross income, then we can add the income input. If you wanted to validate, make sure they didn't give you negative numbers, that's cool too. I didn't ask for any of that stuff, so that's fine. And basically it's the same thing here now, and now I feel a little silly calling this income input. So I'm going to rename this to just input here. And I'm not going to do it the hard way of typing it over, so I'm going to right click and say rename here, and we'll just call this input. Right? And it renames it everywhere for you. Right? And I just do this again now. So I have to reset it to something that's not 0, right? And this will be for deductions. So we'll put it back, enter a deduction or 0 to stop, and then we'll take our total deductions and we'll add the input in there. When we're done, now we need to see which one's bigger. Right? You could use one of those ternary expressions because they're fancy. Again, I don't really like those because they always confuse me. So I'll say, hey, if my total deductions is less than, and then if I'm doing the married brackets, the total deductions is different here. So 2023 standard deduction for married couples is jointly, there we go, 27,000. 27,000, okay, there we go, that number looks a little better. So if it's less than that number, no commas here. Did I show you can put underscores in here instead of commas for digit separators? That's super handy. Just a nice little visual cue. The other silly thing about it though is like, it just ignores underscores, so you can do nonsense like this. Right? Please don't do nonsense like that. But you can use underscores for digit separators.
So you think it wants underscores for the number?
As in numeric literals, it will ignore underscores. Yeah, so you can use it as a digit separator, or you can do it to annoy people in funny places. your preference, right? So if the total deductions is less than that, we'll set total deductions equal to that number here, right? And now I feel bad, I have this number here, it's sort of like a magic number, right? And anytime we have magic numbers, we should feel bad about ourselves, because I have no idea what this is, and the next time I have to go change it, I have to change it in more than one place here, right? So let's go, and I want to extract, oh, is that not gonna give me that? I don't want it as a method, that's fine. We'll just come up here and add it here. We'll make that a constant int standard varied deductions. And now I can use this here, right? Put a nice name to what you're doing. Okay, great. Now I've got my total deductions. Now I'm going to have my adjusted gross income. Adjusted gross income. This is what you pay taxes on. Right? Is your total income, where is it? Gross income minus your total deductions, right? And then, because they're deductions, not credits, you don't get money back. If you didn't have this, that's okay, but you don't pay negative taxes usually. There's all sorts of other rules here, things that are considered credits that do give you money back, but those are a little more tricky. It's not the standard deduction. So having kids is one of the things, and the earned income credit, there's a couple things you can actually get money back for. And this is one of the things that irritates me about Tesla. I bought an electric car because I thought it was cool. I don't want to be hip, right? Because I can do that, and it makes me, I'm cool, right? Because I have an electric car. You guys are shaking your head at me. Okay, that's all right, no worries. But you go to Tesla's website and they advertise a price, and they say this is how much it will cost, but that's not actually the price you pay them, and they're assuming you'll get all of, back when they used to have the electric car deduction, that you get all that money back. Turns out if you didn't pay that much in taxes, you wouldn't actually be able to claim the whole deduction, so it was very misleading. And for maybe not everyone, but a lot of people, some people who bought the car, couldn't actually get the full deduction amount here. Very misleading here on how they labeled it, and that irritated me. Lots of things irritate me. And then I have an uncle who works for GM, so I get a discount. So that's cool too. All right, so we want to make sure this is not zero, right? So if my adjusted gross income is less than zero, let's just stick it at zero then. Right? Just leave it at zero. Because it can't be negative. So if you only made $10,000 and you got your standard deduction of $13,000, sure, you just are going to owe nothing in income tax. It'll be zero, and that's okay. Right? All right, so now we've got those figured out, right? Two quick little loops, and really this is like the exact same thing here, right? This is the exact same code. The only thing that's different is the string here, right? So you were thinking to yourself, I have the same code twice, I should feel bad about myself. Right? That's what's going through your head? Yeah, so if you have the same code twice, feel bad about yourself. So we could do better, right? We could turn this into a function or a method, right? So sure, let's do that. So let's make a method for it here. So we'll call this maybe an int get total here that needs a string for message or something like that, right? Okay, now we will ask them, right, to do something here, right? So I can throw my input is 0, well input's not 0, we'll have something here. Oh, we'll just have an int for total here. Starts off at 0, we'll add to the total here, and instead of printing this, we can just print the message. Right? Whatever the message is, print it out, get some input, add it to this total, right? We're getting a total here. And then we're going to return the total when we're done, right? So now I can have my gross income is equal to a get total with a message of enter the W2 or 0 to stop. That gave you lots of weird quotes here. I was trying to be helpful. And then same for total deductions, right? We can get rid of that one here, and we'll use this message. Let me my get total. Too many quotes there. And some semicolons to make that happy. Right, and now I have a function for that I can use. Just happy? Okay so far? All right, cool. Now we need to go figure out taxes owed at each bracket. I think one person submitted like the same night, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I took a quick look at it, and they weren't showing taxes at the 10% bracket, the 12% bracket, the 22% bracket. It's not the end of the world, right? This was just let's just play with some C# here. But what I asked you for is tell me how much did you pay at 10%? How much did you pay at 12%? How much did you pay at 22%? All the way up here, because we're going to be silly about it and point it out separately. Not that it matters to your total number, but that you can see that even if you make $1 million or if you make $15,000 after deductions, you still pay the same 10%. Right? That's how our system works. Just wanted to illustrate that, because you can learn other things while learning how to code, right? You look so excited to learn other things. I mean, taxes is one of the most boring things out there to learn, so I apologize. But it's very practical, very practical. So we're going to need a bunch of values here. Now, these might be doubles, right? Because if you're paying 10% of something, you might have a fraction in here. So we'll call these doubles. So how about taxes owed at 10%, right? And we're going to start all these off at 0 until we know otherwise, right? So we got 10%, we got 12%, 22%, on and on and on and on. And I'm just going to have a bunch of these. I think that's it, right? So 12 and 22 and 24 and 32, 35, 37. 32, 35, and 37. Okay? Until we know otherwise, they're 0. Now we need to go through and figure out, based on your adjusted gross income, how much do you owe at each of these? Right? So a couple ways we can do this. Right? Again, we can write a bunch of code that's basically identical and then feel bad about ourselves, or we can write a function for it, right? You guys are all thinking function, right? You folks, apologies. While software engineering tends to be a heavily male-dominated field, there are more than just men in the field. Folks, right? All you party people. There's a list of funny gender-neutral terms that faculty could use, because it gets really boring to say, hey, folks, all the time. And then you sound like some southern guy. So the list was not great, though. It was, I think it was supposed to be cringy. Can I say, is it cringy when I say cringe? It probably is, isn't it? Okay. I can't say any of the fun words around my kids. I got 4 teenagers now, and they all yell at 3. She's almost a teenager, and they all yell at me. Come on, Dad. All right, so if we don't want to do the same thing more than once, we're going to say, okay, let's have a double for get taxes owed at bracket. Now, we need a couple things, right? We need the bracket rate, right? We need the, probably an int for the start, bracket start, and strat start, and an int for the bracket. Look at that, even knows bracket end. I love when it suggests code for me. So nice. So if you tell me what the rate is, you tell me where it starts and where it ends, I can figure out how much you owe, right? So what you're going to owe is if, oh, and we also need the income. Shoot, well, that's one more thing. So we need a int for adjusted gross income. There we go. So if your adjusted gross income is greater than the bracket end, we're going to owe all the taxes, right? Or the whole amount. So we're going to return the end minus the start, right, in parentheses, right? We want to force some order of operations here, times the rate, right? Because if you make more than 22,000, you're paying 10% of the whole amount, right? If you make more than 89,450, you pay that minus this, because you already paid taxes on that $22,000 at the 12% rate, right? So either all of the taxes, some of the taxes, or none of the taxes at that bracket. It's one way to go about it. Again, this is not the only way, but this is, I've done this several times now because this entertains me to assign people. So we could calculate it that way. Then else if your adjusted gross income is less than the start, we're going to return 0. Right? If you've made less than the start of the bracket, you owe nothing. These are the two easy ones, right? The hard one is the middle one, and it's not even all that hard either. Otherwise, we're just going to return your adjusted gross income minus the bracket start times the rate. Right? So if you landed in the middle here, so say you made 50,000. 50,000 minus 22,000 you already pay taxes on at 12%. That's your bracket rate. Right? And again, you can have more than one return. You could set this to your taxes owed and then return at the end here. Some people don't like more than one return. Some people like lots of returns. Just a style preference. Don't really care one way or the other here. Now the other thing we're going to need is a bunch more constant ints, right? So this is the, I need the start and end essentially of all of these. So we'll say end of 10% bracket 22,000, right? And maybe I should say these are married. I don't know. 2023, whatever you want here, right? You can put all sorts of details in here, okay? We'll have a bunch of these in here. So we got 10, we got 12, we got 22, we got 24, we have 32, 35, and then 37 is infinite, right? There's no end of that bracket, right? So I don't really need an end here for that one. So 22,000, and I'm just going to start copy pasting in some numbers here. And again, use my underscores. 190. And now I'll have some nice names for these things. 364. 462. 639. Okay, so we got all of these. If you want, you can have starts. That's okay. Not super concerned here. So really, instead of starting these all off at 0, we can just use our function here now, right? We can say, hey, get the taxes owed to the bracket here. Now, if they add more brackets or change the percentages, we'll have to go and do a lot of rework. It's not foolproof. You could do a really fun system, and if you Google or ask ChatGPT, it probably gives you some sort of like a dictionary style that has the bracket rate and the start and the end all in like a bunch of variables. That's a lot of work. We haven't even talked about any of those cool structures yet either. So if you found it, great. If not, that's okay. So we're going to get taxes owed to the bracket. For our adjusted gross income, the bracket rate is 0.37. The bracket start is the end of the previous one. Right? This is the end of the 35 bracket is the start of the 37 bracket. Right? They all start one above. And then the end here is, I don't know, int.maxint, max value. Right? Because we're dealing with integers, you probably don't have more than 2 billion of earned income, which is taxed as earned income, not capital gains. Where capital gains are taxed differently, you're welcome to have more than 2 billion in capital gains income for the year, but you get taxed at a lower rate. You don't pay 37% of that, because of course rich people aren't going to pay 37% of their capital gains. That's what their lobbyists are for. Tax avoidance, right? All right, and we'll just copy paste this. And then now this is 35, and this is the end of the 32% bracket. And then the max value then is the end of the 35 bracket, right? Here's the start, here's the end. Here's the start, here's the end. So this will be a little easier to copy paste off of. Now this is a little long. That's a little sad here, but if you aren't zoomed in as far, it probably will fit on one page, and you won't feel too bad about it here. Or you can bump it down some lines here. This is 24, right? And then 32. And then we had 22 and 24. And then we had 12 and 22. And then we had 10 and 12. And then we had 0, right? That's the start of that one. And then the end of the 10 is the end of that bracket. Right? So this gets our taxes owed at each bracket amount without having to redo a bunch of work, right? You could have just had a bunch of if, else if. Sure, it works, right? There's nothing wrong with it, but if you have the same code twice, you feel bad about yourself. Okay, all right. Okay, so we got all that, and we don't need the hello world here. And now we need a total taxes owed. So total taxes owed is going to be all of those suckers added together here, right? This plus this plus this plus that one, right? So 10 and 12 and 22 and 24 and 32 and 35 and 37. Oh, look at that, I was suggesting it and I missed it. I hate when I miss it. Okay, now we got that one. Oh, thank you. Yes, that would be wrong. That was definitely going to do that on purpose. So when we test our code, we would find out that it was totally off. Yes, thank you. That's an important one. That's the one nice thing. If you've got the dictionary style structure and that's all like in one variable, you just kind of loop through. But again, that's more complex than it needs to be. We haven't seen anything like that before. So, all right, now we got that. So now we're going to write a bunch of things. So we have taxes owed at 10%. And then if we do our interpolated strings here, right, we can throw in some curly braces and throw our variables in. And, you know, I don't know, add some dollar signs, make it look pretty here. Sure, why not? And we'll go through and do all of the different brackets here. So 10, 12, 22, 24, 32, 35, and 37, right? And then update these ones. 10, 22, 24, 32, 35, 37. Okay, and then we have a total taxes owed, That's our total taxes owed. And if you wanted to do pretty formatting, go for it. Do your pretty formatting. You could add like, round off here or take away decimal places or whatever you wanted to do. The math should be pretty easy here. Occasionally you might get a bunch of decimal places. I don't really care. It's okay. And then we needed taxes owed as percentage of gross income is the total taxes owed divided by my gross income. And then we had this again, total taxes owed. Where's my end key? My goodness. Really? Don't have an end key? There it is. Of adjusted gross income. My adjusted gross income. Okay, so let's give it a run. Probably will work. We'll see. I probably should have been running more often than this, but we'll see what we got here. All right, so W2 income or stop. Let's do 100,000. And then we'll do 10,000. And then 0 to stop. And then deductions. Let's go for the standard. So if we just say 1,000 for deductions, we should get the standard deduction here. I probably should have spit out some of those numbers somewhere too, right? So we paid the max at the 10% rate, right? And then 110,000, let's see, so 110,000, oops, 110, come on, 110,000 minus, what was our standard deduction, 27,700, 82,000, right? Minus 22,000 times 0.12, 7,236. Let's see, is that what we got? 7,236. Checks out okay. Total taxes, add those two together, divide by, right? So if you make 110,000, your effective tax rate, right, is 8.5%. Probably shouldn't have put a dollar sign in there. That doesn't make sense for percentages, does it? That's bad. No, those aren't dollars. Those are percentages, right? So you paid about 8.5%, right? Because you get the standard deduction, and then you pay 10% and 12%, right? Even if you're at the 12% bracket, you're not going to pay 12% of all your income, okay? Super exciting. We good now? All right. So there's just some shortcuts in there. Was that 73 lines of code, but a lot of it's copy-paste, right? Just because I've got a lot of constants and things like that, so not too bad. I'll go ahead and commit that to GitHub. We want 297. So here's project 0. What do I have here? Oh, did I forget to do that? Shoot. Okay, hang on. Let me do project 0 first. You can commit selectively for how it does your snapshot. It'll just make your history a little bit cleaner here. I got to commit this last week. Commit. And we can update. All right, so now it should be in sync, right? I can go view on GitHub, and I got my folders here, got project 0, got the CIS file out here, and we're pretty happy. Okay? All right. Was that worth half an hour? Okay. All right. Let me start up a new project here. So now when we're dealing with forms, right, we're not doing console apps anymore. We want clicky things with buttons, because everyone likes to click on buttons. Much more interesting here. So two different styles here. Right? We've got the .NET framework, the older .NET framework stuff, and then we've got, doesn't say .NET framework because it's the .NET Core stuff. It's okay. The naming, Microsoft is not great at naming, as you can tell by Xbox. Right? Xbox, Xbox 360, Xbox One, Xbox S, Xbox X. Like, I don't know. Naming things is hard. At least they figured out Windows. Now we're 10, 11, right? I don't know what happened to 9. Do we know what happened to 9? Right, we have 7, 8, 10, 11. I don't know. So they say like every other version is usually pretty terrible. So far I've been okay with 11. That was probably a little while back. All right, anyway, so we want to do a Forms app. A couple different ways to do Forms app, right? There's the regular Windows Forms here, using WinForms, again, a little older style, or a WPF, the Windows Presentation Framework. This was slightly newer, sort of caught on here, did some fun things here. We could do those as well. And .NET MAUI, right, is the new stuff that's supposed to be cross-platform. We'll look at that later. This one is slow. It's a bit of a hog, but cross-platform stuff is hard. Or even do it in Blazor, which is fun. This is their like integrated web development stuff you can do in C#. Is really cool. There's a couple guys who have lots of fun videos on Blazor if you like doing web stuff. It's really neat. What else do we have in here? Or Universal Windows Platform, we'll get to. This will be a little bit later on. We can do these ones here. I was looking for the XAML one. It's in here somewhere. There's a lot. It's way too many here. Let me just search, I guess, XAML. Oh, it is that one. Yeah, yeah. Okay. No, I'm just mixed up here. Yeah. So this one is the one that we'll be using XAML for us as well. So for now, though, we'll try a Windows form app. And we'll call this, sure, WinForms app 1. I don't know. Sure, that's a fine name here. Go next and create. Now, some fun stuff with C#. Again, we haven't really gotten to all the details of how it all works behind the scenes. But you see in the Solution Explorer, we get a couple different things here. We've got form1.cs, we've got form1.designer.cs, we've got form1.resx, and then we got the program.cs. The program.cs we pretty much don't ever touch. What this one does, if you take a look, it has a main method. So this is where it starts. It says, hey, go run a form. Make a new form and run it. So the only thing it does is it serves as the entry point to when you hit the run button, it goes and starts the form up. Right? It does a bunch of cool things behind the scenes with it being a form, but for us, we don't really have to care too much about it here. So the form 1, we've got design view. Now the scaling, weird stuff, don't worry too much about it here. We're not doing anything super fancy where we're going to care too much about responsive UIs. That's more advanced than we want to get here. You do fun stuff with scaling. You can probably just ignore that message. Right? But in form 1, I can right click on it, I can say view code or view designer. So the design view is where we're going to drag and drop stuff onto here. The code view is all the fun code behind the scenes. So if I view code, it says partial class form 1. Again, we'll get to partial later here. It initializes components. And then you see this little colon here. It inherits from form, which is in the Windows system, Windows Forms form class. Right, so we're using inheritance here. We are a form. We do all the things form does, and then now we're a special version of form. This is one of the reasons we like object-oriented programming with inheritance, right? I don't have to do anything to be a form other than say, hey, I am one. And I get all the cool stuff. So I just hit run right out of box now. I can drag it around. I can resize it. I get minimize, maximize, and close. I'm a form. Those are out-of-box form things. It's not very interesting yet. So let's go back to design view. So in design view, I need my toolbox. Where is that? So this is the toolbox here if you don't have it. The toolbox is all of the things you can do in a Windows form. It's initializing. There we go. There's gazillion things here you can do. Menus and toolbars, you can do components, you can do printing stuff, dialogue stuff, data things, lots of really fun things here. Most of the time we just want the common ones, right? You can get crazy if you want. Again, we're not going for crazy, we're just going for something quick here. So common controls. Button. Buttons are things you click on, right? So we like buttons. So you just drag and drop it anywhere you want here. And now when I click on button, where's my details? That's weird. View. Goodness. There's too many windows here. Too many options. Property? Is it property manager? No. I want to view the properties. Yeah, I've got it clicked. I should have like a list of properties here. I'm super confused. It's in here somewhere. Toolbars? Oh man. Why am I not? Properties window. The one named properties window. I was looking for properties. Again, why is it not in like one of these things? I don't know. It's a common one. So the properties window, generally I have it like in the same spot here as the other ones. You can put stuff anywhere you want in Visual Studio, and it drives me crazy sometimes because it's so flexible. But let's grab this one here. We care about the properties. And if you want to change the text that's showing right now, you go to the text property. Pretty straightforward. And we'll say click me with an exclamation mark, because why not, right? So these are all the properties. You can change all sorts of different things about it here. So if you want to change the font, right, let's go change the font here. Let's change this to something a little better. Come on, where is it? Comic Sans, there we go. Now we've got the best font out there, which is a little bit of a joke, but Comic Sans is actually more friendly for people with dyslexia, like my daughter. So I try and do everything that I can in Comic Sans. And it irritates people, because some people hate Comic Sans for no good reason. And I also think that's funny. So, but Comic Sans is great. You can change the font, you can change the color, any sort of things you want to do about it, you can change in here in properties. We're not going to get into all of them here, right? If we want something to happen when we click the button, we need to go to events. So when we write our console applications, they just run from top to the bottom, right? First line, second line, third line, and then we can make things jump with methods, right? It jumps to here and repeats and does loops and all sorts of flow control, but it's still top to bottom. The only time it sits and waits is when you ask for input, right? With a form, there's no loop that's running. The form starts and it sits there. What it does is it waits for the user to interact with it. So we're going to be event driven. When an event happens, when the user does something, now we need to run some code, right? So I don't have a place to do anything quite yet. So I'm going to go back to my toolbox and I'm going to grab a label. Labels are great for text. I don't know why it's not called text, but it's called a label. Now, an important thing, if you want to work with this in code, you care about its name. It's near the top of the list of properties, which is nice. So label 1's not a great name for this here, right? So label, I don't know, the click me label maybe? How about click me label? So in code, it'll be known as the click me label, and then I can come to the text here and I can take the text out. Now, it's really hard to see where that went now, which is a little bit sad. Right? If I want to try and find that, you can like highlight and get lucky sometimes, or you can come back to your drop down here and go find it again. In the properties list, you can pick each individual item here. So if you take the text away, it's still here, right? We can go find it again. Not the end of the world. But this is the click me label. And again, we should probably change our font here to something a little better. So let's make this Comic Sans again. All right, cool. So now we got a better font on there. Now, if I want something to happen when I click the button, I'm just going to double click the button. When I double click the button, it takes me to the code that says what happens when you click the button. This is the button 1 click. Now, I probably should have renamed the button. It's named button 1 in the design view, right? Its name here, button 1, that's not great. It's not the end of the world. Don't worry about it. It's okay. We can always change it later. Well, what do we want to do? When the button gets clicked, how are we going to handle that event? Well, I'm going to take the label, my click me label, right? Click me label, and I'm going to take the text property and set it to hello world. How about that, right? Our little hello world program. So we'll set the text here. So text is a string. It's a property of the label class here. And now what's interesting, you don't even see click me label. Like it's not defined anywhere in here. Right? We don't see it. That's okay. I'll show you where it's hidden in a little bit. Right? Now we hit run. We run our little program here. I click me, and it says hello world. We've now done our first graphical user interface program, hello world style. Super exciting, right? It's hard to do these night classes. I'm sorry. We're trying, but we just got to power through. All right, so we did it. So this is event driven, right? When an event happens, this is what we're doing to deal with it, to do something. So if I could have 7 different buttons, right? I don't just run code from top to bottom. I wait for the user to click a button, and once they've clicked the button, I need to do something, right? Other cool things we can do, let me go back to my design view here, we can add in a text box. Text boxes are places users can type here. So it's a text box. We probably want a name for it, right? Give it some sort of name so it's not text box 1 in code, right? So this is the name text box. Some people think it's redundant to put the word text box in because it is a text box. It is a little bit, but in my code view, when I start typing text box, it will give me all the text boxes out there because I forget what I name things all the time. That's all. So I like it. If someone says don't do it, then don't do it. It's not going to hurt anything here. Cool. So we got a name text box here. Now, if I want to do something, instead of hello world, we can say hello, and then I'm going to do some string interpolation here, right? We'll take the name text box dot text. Whatever they type in here, we'll just throw into our label. Right? The computer will say hi to you. Now, how do they know to put their name here, though? Well, they don't. So we probably want a label on the screen. This is the other reason that they're called labels, right? So this one, now we can say, enter your name. And then you can just drag it. Nope, shoot, I did not want that. Label click. Okay. Oh, come on. Give me my label back. I undid too much. Label, call this one the enter your name, and drag it over. Now, as you drag and drop stuff, you get these little helper lines. I don't know if you can see that really tiny blue line. It's trying to align things. It's saying, hey, the bottom of this is aligned with the bottom of that. As you click and drag, the text is aligned with the text here. That's where that one sort of is. You can make it look really pretty. I am really bad at making pretty things. It's not a skill of mine. I did not go to school for human-computer interaction or user experience sort of stuff. I'm going to stay in my lane. Is that okay? I will not make pretty things. If you would like to make pretty things, please do. That's fantastic. We need pretty things, okay? But I'm assuming I'm going to show you how it works, and then if you would like to take the time to make it pretty, you go make it pretty. Anyway, so this label, I didn't set the name on because I don't care about it. I'm not going to ever touch it in code. It's just going to always say, enter your name. I'm never going to do anything with this label here. So I don't need to change the name of it, right? Because I'm not going to bother using it. So now when I run, it says, hey, enter your name. We'll put in Eric Chernesky. And I say, click me, or click me, and it says, hello, Eric Chernesky. I spelled my name wrong. That's really sad. Let me try that again. Chernesky. There, now I fixed it. Or, hello, Eric. Right? And I can type anything I want in here. Whatever I type in gets thrown in this box here, right? And text boxes are fun. They can be like super long. You can put limits on it and do all sorts of fun things here. And eventually it scrolls off the page and we can like drag our window around because it's a fun little window control, right? If we want. There's no wrapping. We're not going to deal with any of that. That's harder than we care about right now, okay? But this is our first little graphical interface program. So if you need to collect data from the user, like, hey, enter your W-2 income, you need a text box for them to type something in, and then a button to click on, usually a button. Now, you can wire up the enter key. That's a little trickier, because you have to say, as the buttons are being pressed, how do I see if they entered the enter key rather than any other key? It's definitely doable. Honestly, we could probably just go ask chat for that. Like, how do we wire that up? Because that's fun too. So let's go ask chat. Is it UMGPT, right? This is the nice one here. It's version 4. Bless you. Let's see if it can figure it out for us here. Using a WinForm text box to I trigger an event, and the enter key is pressed. I'm even going to use question marks because we should be nice to our bots, our future robot overlords. My kids are mean to the Echo Dot, and they yell at Alexa all the time. I don't know why. Like, it's just a computer. All right, here we go. So possibly a couple things we can do on key press, on key down. So there's lots of cool events. So when you go to the text box here, if you want to see what events are possible to handle, you click the little lightning bolt here. These are all the events. There's a lot of them. And this is why this stuff is a headache sometimes, because there's a ton here, right? Is it click? Is it up? Is it down? Sure. Is it text changed? Is it... Right. Lots of fun things here. So how about it's suggested on key press, right? And if you hover over it here, or just click on it, it gives you a little bit of helper text down here. So key press occurs when the control has focused and the user presses and releases a key. On key down, if I push and hold a key, it triggers, and I'm still holding that key. If it's key pressed, it waits for me to down and up, right? Slight difference there. Right? I think I told you last week, we got some poor guy's computer reimaged because a cat sat on his keyboard and like kept trying to log into our forum because they sat on the enter key. Probably should have waited for the key up, not just on key press. Right? Those sorts of things are tricky sometimes. And so we're going to go on key press. So what do we want to do on key press? So instead of just double clicking it here, because it's not going to give me the event I want, I'm going to come here to key press and I can give it the name of a method here. So how about we say, I don't know, text box key press. I hit enter. Now it generates the code for me. Hey, on text box key press, the object is the sender. The key pressed event args is E. Now this is going to be important here. When a key is pressed, it's going to give me some event arguments, something about the event here. And if you looked at the sample code, it says, hey, E.keycode. So the event args that are passed here tell you what key was pressed. There's all sorts of cool properties here that we can look at. So if it was pressed, let's do a thing here, right? So we'll just use this part here. If E dot, oh goodness, it wasn't key code, E dot key char. Sure, key char, why not? Can't be applied. Okay, so it's not that one, so we have to do something slightly different. Keychar dot, no, what kind of thing is this here? Keychar is just a char. How do I get the enter key off of that one then? Hang on, e dot keychar. That's it, that's all we got. Why is this one giving me key code? It's not working here. Should be it. Interesting. Okay. The bot's failing us. Yeah.
You're missing the bracket. I thought that's the issue. At the bottom of bracket void.
Oh, down here? I don't think that's why. Yeah, so we want e dot key char is, I can't do a, how do I do a char for the enter key?
Is it character clear?
I'm sorry?
Character clear?
I'm having a hard time.
Backslash R.
Oh, like the return? I don't think we want that. I don't, it might be.
Well, maybe backslash.
Yeah, the like the new line, it might be that one. ASCII character. Let's see, e dot keychar. We'll see e dot keychar enter key. We'll see what the internet thinks. Char of 13.
Because that's backslash 9.
Well, that's fun. Ah, or the char of, where did I like that suggestion? Someone had it. Key dot enter. E dot key?
Oh, no,
Yeah, that wasn't working for us, right? Key dot. So we want, someone had a really nice one here. Convert to char, keys dot return. I like that instead of 13, because I'm not going to remember what a 13 is. 13. So might do it. We'll find out. So, hang on, we did 2 different sources here. So again, let's cite our source here. Here's that one. And the other part, right, we asked the chatbot for this. Asked UMGPT. Right, we're going to cite our sources. See if this works for us. All right, so if it's that, then. Now, again, I don't want to do the same thing twice. I still want it to work for buttons, because people still like to click things. They're not going to know to hit the enter key, as most users don't type things and hit enter. They like to click things, right? So I want to do this as a method here. So I'm going to extract this as a method. We'll say this is update label. So it takes all that code I highlighted, made it into a method called update label. And we'll throw that in here for update label as well. See if that works for us. We'll find out. Hey! It's working. It also makes a fun. I don't know where it came from. Probably because it's a form. You get all sorts of good stuff there. That's fun. And we can still click me, right? It should still work with click me's. We're excited. You don't look as excited as me. That's okay. We made it work. Okay, so we need all sorts of fun things like that. So if you are going to rebuild our project 0 as a WinForm, right, we need places to enter values and then to total them up. You probably want to give them a running total somewhere. I don't know. Options, that's okay. I got lots of choices on how you want to do that. Right? And then to display stuff, you throw it in a label. So you set the text of a label, like we did with our clickmelabel.text, to this. If you want a multi-line label here, right, you can throw in your own new lines or _n's. I've been told the environment.newline is the best way to do that here. Sure. Well, you can add in new lines and then say, concatenate in here, line 2. And then that should give me line 2, right, on a second line. Just kind of shows up like we'd expect, which is nice. So you can drag it around. Now, again, if you don't know where it is, go back and find, oops, where'd it go? Wow, I really confused it. Okay, I just had to load for a second here. Then I click me label, right? If you don't want it there, you can put it somewhere else or move it up. Wow, that was fun. It's a little weird sometimes. And put it anywhere you want here. Right? Put your labels places, and we're good to go. Now, a fun thing, if you like this to keep going over and over and over and over again, instead of setting the text to this, right, we can append the text with a plus equals. So click me, click me, click me, click me, keeps on going, right? But because I didn't have a new line at the end of line 2, when I keep on appending text, it just stays on the same line, right? And as I put stuff in here, right, it's going to keep on going. Uh-oh. I did a weird thing and my button disappeared. There's, in the UI, things are on top of or behind, which gets to be a fun, like, positioning-wise, what things are at the front or the back. So you can say bring to front if you want it to be in front of everything, be on the front of the UI, and that should keep it from getting hidden if it gets messed up like that again. There we go. So now it's on top, right, instead of being behind. That's all. So you can order things like that. It gets to be a little funny. Again, pretty UIs are tough. That's okay. We're not going to worry too much about pretty UIs. All right. So that is our basic WinForm. Let's go back to the toolbox. Other fun things we can do. Picture boxes, if you like images. You use a picture box and you set an image. Getting images into your project is a little bit tricky. We're not going to worry about this until later, but you can use this to pick pictures, and then you can dynamically change them in code if you want. Later we'll do a little card game. It'll be a little bit of fun, and then we can play with images then. We don't need to get into that right now. Radio buttons are different than buttons in that one and only one of them can be pressed in a group at a time. So if you have options like, what kind of milk do you want in your coffee? You can have soy milk, whole milk, or cow milk, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, almond milk, oat milk. Are there other kind of milks? I don't know what else people. I drink my coffee black, which is better for me anyway as a diabetic. But that would probably be a radio button option. I don't know many people who like to mix milks in their coffee. Right? I'm sure Starbucks will let you pay for that, but probably that'd be like a radio button option. Right? Which one do you want here? Now, checkboxes though are any and all. Right? Like condiments on a burger. What do you want? Do you want ketchup? Do you want mustard? Do you want mayo? They're not mutually exclusive. Right, so just check any of them that you want here. So we can work with checkboxes. If you want multiple options here, you can have radio buttons. So if you wanted to get fancy, we can make our program say, hey, do you want the married brackets or the single brackets? And that can be a radio button choice. I'm not going to make you do that. It's just a fun thought exercise if you cared. All right, that would make sense for us to pick that way, right? Not necessarily checkboxes. Okay. List views or list boxes are great for like drop-down boxes. I want to pick a list of things from here. So you can put a list of options in there for them to pick from, which is really fun. So in the list box, you can have different options. These get to be a little bit tricky here. I'm going to edit my items here. So what items do I want in my list box here? Oh, like first, second, third. Okay. Now we've got first, second, and third here. So when it runs, I can pick first, second, or third. Right, from my list box, and later we can go see which one of these things is picked, and you can do fun things when one of these is picked, do something, right, based on your list box here as well. And I think it automatically gives us the drop down here if we go and edit. Come on, wake up. Edit. 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. I could have just shrunk the window here, but there. Let's see. Yeah, now I get a little scroll bar, right? So a lot of these components, right, they just sort of work out of box, which is nice. Like, hey, now I can drag and pull this up, pull it down if I want here. I've got my nice little list here. I can do whatever I want with it. Okay, so we got some fun things here. So if we wanted to do something when it changed, here, it's got to load. It's a little slow, which is sad, but this visual designer is really nice. If I double click on it, it says, okay, the selected indexed changed. Okay. Oh, I never named it here, so let's go and give it a name here. So this is list box 1. Here's our, I don't know, sequence list box or so. We'll call it that. Okay. So when it changes, let's go update the label. And when we update the label, then let's take our click me box, and instead of adding line 2, let's see if we can't get our sequence list box dot. We want the selected item, selected value, probably selected value. One of these things here. Item. There's so many options here. I can never remember which one's which. So dot's like the common one. Text. Text to the currently selected. Okay, that's probably what we want here. Let's see if that works for us here. So I pick third. We got third, fifth, first, third again, seventh. Yeah. All right, so we get the text back out. Right? So lots of different ways we can interact with it. Yeah.
The function name that didn't change when you used it.
No, it didn't. No. If you want to go change it, you can. In your code, we would go right-click and rename. This is, what do we call it? A sequence list box. Sequence list box. Make sure you do it that way, because now the piece I didn't show you yet, all the hidden stuff. Right? Where do all these things show up here? Well, because this is defined as a partial class, C# has some cool little shortcuts that say you can have different parts of your class in different places, which is really nice. So this designer.cs is all of the stuff that's auto-generated by the design view. So if we scroll down in here, we see, hey, here's all my attributes. Right? Here's a private button. So this is a class level attribute for the button, for the label. So this is why these things exist, because it's part of the Form 1 class. They're partially defined here. And then it's got this like hidden section here. Don't mess with it, right? It can do weird things if you mess with it. But if you want to see what it's doing here, that initialize components line that initializes components does this. Right? It creates new instances so they exist in memory. When we deal with objects, you have to initialize them so they exist in memory. That happens here. Right? And then it goes and sets all the different properties. So all the things we changed in properties, like, hey, the font, I set it to Comic Sans. Here's the location. It does locations based on pixels. And in computer land, top left is 0, 0. Forget math land where the origin is the bottom, is like the center here. This is 0, 0. This is the way things work because computer land is better than math land. Okay, just don't graph stuff because that gets really confusing. So it is 282 pixels x. So the x-axis, 382 pixels over for the button from the top left, and 285 pixels down from there. So if you wanted to measure, we could measure pixel by pixel. It does not sound like fun, but that's where it is, right? It's a fixed location in here. That's that location here. Its name is button 1. We're going to call it button 1. Sure, why not? So all those things that we set. Then this stuff here is the event handling. When we said, hey, when we click that button here, when you click the button and you look at the event view here, it says you run the button 1 click method. That's set over here. We'll talk about this stuff when we get to the advanced C# things. This is really neat. We're actually adding like delegates, which is really fun. And you can do really cool stuff with this later on here. But it's really cool that it just auto-generates it for you here. And again, generally don't want to mess with these things. Weird stuff can happen. Okay. Where's that sequence list box? Where's that one? Here we go. So it adds this range of items. So if you want to, you can change the items in code if you care to. That gets to be a little bit tricky. It's not that hard to do, but you could dynamically add or remove items from a list box based on other things that happen in your code, right? And you've worked with interesting UIs before, right? This is just the super basics here where things are pretty static. But we can make interesting UIs that go and dynamically change themselves based on what's happening. Right? The world is now your oyster. Okay. All right, I got 7 o'clock. I've been talking for a while. Should we take a break? Come back in 10 minutes? All right, let's do that. I'll just pause the recording. I'll do it in 2 chunks again. We should be in pretty good shape.